All right. Well, hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today. My name is Joe Steiner. I'm a solutions architect here at Concurrency. With me today, we have Corey Milliman, who's one of our technical specialists in the field. Corey, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Corey Milliman. I'm a technical architect with Concurrency, and I work a lot with Copilot, Copilot Studio, and some of our pro code solutions as well.
Definitely. So thank you. So yeah, today what we thought we'd do is we've had a lot of conversations about Copilot and building agents and how do we leverage AI within the organization. One thing we feel like we haven't paid as much attention to is the pre-built Copilot capabilities designed for IT, for the technical resources that are making all this happen for everybody else. Well, how can AI help you, help out IT, the people that are making all this happen? So we want to give a quick tour today of the Copilot capabilities that are available and or in preview. And we'll call those out as we go through this in terms of where they lie, what can they do for you. We've got a set of sample prompts here, and we will make this available later. I'm not going to read through all those as we get to there, but it's just kind of a good reference for you to start playing around with these things, see what they can do for you. We'll also call out where some of these can actually take action and those where they're providing just information. So for comfort levels in terms of what you can and can't do with these and all that. But I really just wanted to have kind of a quick tour of all that's possible there. So here at Concurrency, we kind of look at the world and, there's the core technology, infrastructure, security needs that every organization has. There's the technology that applies to people. And then also, how do you help people adapt to the technology? And then all of that leads to, okay, how are we changing the way we're working, right? How are we changing businesses and process, and how are we developing those next generation capabilities there? The truth is today, there are Copilots for IT in each one of these segments that we're gonna go through today. I think hopefully you'll find that beneficial. Biggest thing we'll encourage you at the end is go play with this. If you have questions about it afterwards, feel free to contact us. But we're excited to show you what's all out there. The primary 5 areas that we're going to talk about today are Copilot in M365, and specifically in the M365 admin centers. A lot of you are probably aware that there's Copilot inside of Word and Excel. There's obviously the M365 Copilot. This is specifically the M365 Copilot within the admin centers to help you handle some of the administrative tasks behind the scenes in Microsoft 365. We're also going to dive a little further into specifically that as it pertains to SharePoint, because that gets extended in SharePoint beyond what happens generally within the rest of the M365 admin centers and the Copilots there. There's even further capabilities inside of SharePoint, and there's a new AI in SharePoint capability that's out in preview right now, actually involving Anthropic, for any of you that are interested in there. Extending along that, there's Copilot capabilities built into Power Platform, including the Vibe experience that we'll talk about a little bit, which really can really open up that citizen development at some levels, and or just even having your developers be able to develop things faster, however you want to approach that. But really powerful capabilities there that might help accelerate some simple use cases. Obviously, these things are continuing to evolve. We'll also talk about the Azure Copilot, which has gotten very powerful. There have been a lot of developments in that space that can do quite a bit at this point. We're pretty excited about the capabilities there. And then finally, Security Copilot. Security Copilot is one of the first of the IT administrative copilots, and it kind of provides a good example where Microsoft may be taking a lot of these, where Security Copilot is really a platform unto itself at this point. We'll kind of finish with our conversations there. So kind of building through those that have a little less capabilities, and then kind of ramping to those that have more as we go through the course of the conversation today. So let's start with Microsoft 365. The Copilot in the M365 Admin Center. You can reach this through the Admin Center. You'll see we've got kind of an image here on the slide for you just pulling down the Copilot when you're in the Admin Center. There is a Microsoft 365 Admin Agent that can be available inside of M365 Copilot Chat. The requirements for this really are just a single Copilot license, and that any user that's trying to use this has to have an administrative role. It still respects the roles and permissions that you have granted and won't allow you to view things that you can't, and so on. So Microsoft's done a nice job with that. Some of the core capabilities of this are I can do what's known as a administrative recap, which will kind of walk you through, okay, here's what's going on in service health, in message center, and in other areas of the admin console, and just kind of the base reporting, right? Let's get a summary of what's all out there. You also can get general administrative health and support, but basically searching, kind of the Microsoft Learn archives and library, and be able to pull down things as you're trying to get things done in the experience embedded in there. You can interact with things within Message Center and Service Health. You can do searching information for users and groups, licensing, combinations of those. And then within Teams specifically, there's some additional capabilities to be able to surface Teams insights and help you with the process of troubleshooting Teams policies and maybe some meeting things, maybe some quality of service issues that maybe happened, things like that. You'll note most of this is really just surfacing information. So it's just giving you kind of the reporting information that exists within the admin center. Coming forward, there will be ability to provide for license assignment through the chat experience. So you can say, hey, assign this license to this individual just through the chat experience, and also be able to schedule prompts. There'll also be some agent management capabilities there, likely going to be tied to some of the Agent 365 functionality. So, but the license assignment and prompt scheduling will be part of this core M365 admin center. As examples of some of the sample prompts that are available, here are some of those. I'm going to leave this up for a moment, let everybody view these. I'm going to spare you from reading you through all of these. A couple of the interesting ones is, advice on, how do I restore a deleted user? Can you show me the health of Teams? Get information on, show me all the users who are not using Copilot in the last 30 days. Right. So there, it helps me start managing my licensing there just by taking in that information. How many of a certain kind of license are available? Find, users that, maybe have no custom meeting policy assigned if I'm trying to apply those for everyone. You'll see in bold there, some of the things are, those might be an option. So why can't this specific UPN or ID record meeting? So, kind of the advice on these, as we'll talk about a little later, is make sure you want to get it as specific as possible. If you put a name in there, they may not give you the exact results that you want. So the more specific you can be, the better your experience will be. And just, things like this. So a lot of different things. Hopefully this gets you, I would encourage you, for any of you that are M365 admins, go play. There's really no harm that can be done from this. It's just see if that provides information to you in a useful fashion, and start, thinking about that in terms of that way you're not having to click through all the screens and navigate to where Microsoft has moved this this month, as we all know can happen from time to time. So that's the M365 Copilot experience. We expect that to evolve over time and move along and add more functionality there, but that's where it sits right now. Next, let's talk about SharePoint. Within SharePoint, there's a lot of capabilities in terms of, the Copilot. It kind of extends out a little further beyond what the M365 functionality is. And then AI in SharePoint really gets to the user level and allows me to do things like create sites just using a chat prompt, and or start working with my sites there, which ultimately can extend down to the users. So that is something you'll opt in on, but we'll kind of chat about that a little bit. First, Copilot in SharePoint. Again, it's in the SharePoint Admin Center. All it requires is one Copilot license for the org, and this will be enabled. And then you have to have an admin role in order to work through these things. Again, examples are, kind of support step-by-step guidance for how to do certain things. I can search using multiple different criteria across the sites that are out there. So maybe I want to find any sites that meet a couple of different criteria. I can do that. I can drill in on details for a specific site. So I can call out a site and say, hey, can you show me all the details on this and or certain information there? I can ask about site permissions. I can ask about site lifecycle questions, and then also some storage questions for any of you that have a lot of information in SharePoint and data and are trying to manage the storage allocations. You can leverage that. Here you'll see an example of a show me detail about project site, project Z. And this is the example of some of the information that's being stored there. This is pretty high level, but it actually can fill in a little further in some of the administrative ones from there. Again, some example prompts here. Find sites created in the last month that are shared externally. This could be very useful for if you're trying to, keep your arms around how much are we sharing out there, any data exfiltration issues, things like that. Which sites are overshared in my tenants and why? One of the reports there will produce a list of sites that maybe are marked as top secret, but yet are open to everybody. So to help you manage the permissions within the organization to control where maybe we should be locking things down a little more. Maybe list all the sites with more than 1,000 users that can access that. So which are the ones that are open to larger parts of the organization? Talk about, ask questions about storage, list the top inactive ownerless sites. So maybe I can start cleaning things up in there and just get that list very simply without having to go through reports and filter through those. Help me clean up SharePoint storage, a whole host of different questions you can ask of this. So this here, SharePoint is kind of extended down a little further into what you're actually doing within SharePoint, not just core M365 administration, but what am I doing as a SharePoint administrator at some levels? From there, I can start leveraging AI in SharePoint. This is available in preview right now, and you do have to opt in. This is available just within SharePoint. So if I have the ability to create a site, and I have had this enabled, I can actually use this today. You need a Copilot license for every user that's going to use this. You have to opt into the preview, and then very specifically, you have to enable Anthropic as an AI subprocessor. There are instructions for this, so we can help you with that as well. That basically allows you to use Anthropic as the AI LLM behind the scenes that can make these things happen. You also can control the scope of this. So you can say, hey, only these users are allowed to do this. And you can only do this in these settings. So there's some scope controls inside of there too that you'd have to enable to make this happen. Once you do that, though, there are abilities to create sites straight from a chat prompt. So we'll kind of talk about that example specifically in the next slide. I can create a document library. I can create autofill columns. So I can create some of the core SharePoint site elements in there just by using chat prompts. I can tell it to automate workflows. Here's an example on the side here where I told it to create a rule that sends notification when content within the site changes. And so it'll create that rule. It'll take on who you want to be notified and go ahead and create the Power Automate flow behind the scenes there to be able to manage that for you. You can create different views within a library using this and be able to, one of the really cool ones, which I'm not going to dive into today, but we will, I believe, in 2 weeks' time, is talk a little further about structured document generation. That one is a very cool capability that allows you to give it a set of maybe forms and or documents that are similarly structured, allow the AI engine to analyze those, create its own form template for that, and then it'll create a form application that you can then use to populate those over time, and it'll provide a legible document in the same format as the other documents that you shared in there originally. So it allows for a very controlled workflow to create documents that maybe you're generating all the time. Could be invoices, those could be, a whole host of different examples there. So it doesn't even have to be as much of a form as just have a general document structure. So you have kind of standard notices that are going out to customers, and just it's almost like the AI enabled mail merge in some ways. But for those of you that have been around for a bit, but it really takes that to another level. It makes it very simple to create. So there's a lot of cool things there. Again, we'll talk about that further as we go in the future. Today, let's spend a little bit of time on building a site with AI, just as an example. Inside of SharePoint, if I have this preview enabled, I can create a site with AI as I go to create a site within SharePoint. I could create a team site, I could create a communication site, and then it gives me the option to create a site with AI where you start by providing a description in chat. And then it will give you a proposed plan and outline for how it would construct that site, which you can then interact with and say, no, I really don't like this. Change this to that, make the edits inside of there. And then, which will allow you to kind of refine that plan for that site and then tell it to go and create the site for you. As you explore the new site, you can refine that then using the chat interface to say, hey, maybe change this, change that. There will be some limitations to that at first, but for a lot of basic sites, this can really speed up site creation as you enable this and makes for a very powerful capability. Particularly for those of you that allow users maybe to set up sites that maybe are what they need within a site, but maybe aren't as adept at that over time. This could really, really speed that process up if you're allowing for certain users to do this. And again, you can scope who could use this. Really powerful capability, and starts to show where Microsoft's branching out away from OpenAI as it's using Anthropic as the LLM behind the scenes on this one. Okay. All right. So next, let's talk about Power Platform and Copilot for Power Platform. This has existed for some time, but this is in the process of changing as they're starting to leverage the Vibe experience and leverage plans inside of here a little differently. Again, this exists within Power Apps and Power Automate. The requirements, because this is changing, I didn't want to state specifically what the requirements were, because some of this is going to be available with you've got to have a Copilot license. There's some of this is going to be available just by having the ability to be an administrator within Power Apps and Power Automate. And then some of these you might have to have a Copilot license with that. More to follow on that. But if you have a Copilot license and are a PowerPoint administrator, you probably can get into the preview on a lot of these things right now. One of the key pieces of this is the Vibe experience, which we're going to talk about in the next slide in slightly more detail, which really kind of allows for an end-to-end creation process for Power Apps. Again, probably ideal for simpler Power Apps. You have more complex ones, that'll probably evolve over time, but it can really speed up that creation process and really help you enable the organization to start be thinking about, okay, how can I use these tools in intelligent ways and get to build very rapidly, which can be very, very powerful. You can create and edit PowerPoint plans, which Vibe ultimately begins with creating a plan. What a plan is a more holistic view of creating a Power App, where I've got a set of user requirements. It'll take the data that's going to be needed for that, and then have the technology and the connectors that are going to be required as part of that, and bring all of that together based on the description that you provided. It will provide recommendations for all those and let you go through and edit all of those. As I go through that, I can go and create and edit PowerPoint plans using Copilot. I can create and edit Power Apps existing apps and data models using that. So I can add fields to the data model. Maybe I'm using Dataverse for that. Can add fields to that just by using chat. And I can actually, one of the really cool things is I'm generating requirements within a plan. I can actually have it give me a process diagram based on what I described in there, which can be very useful to kind of help everybody understand what this thing would do and how it fits in with the rest of the workflows within an organization. More on the Power Automate side, I can use this to create cloud workflows. And so those are those workflows that use, the cloud connectors that are available. I can get help with cloud flows. So if I'm starting to run into some things, I can ask questions of it. It also allows you to do some of the creation of desktop flows, which gets more into the kind of robotic automation capabilities that are available. Some of those require additional licensing. So not promising that all that's going to be available in your situation, but the Vibe experience and the Power Apps plans, and again, if you have Copilot and Power Apps license, you should be able to get into that preview now. Worth taking a look at and seeing what that can provide for you. Specific to building an app with the Vibe experience, here's what that looks like, where it gives you a chat prompt. What do you want to plan? And it'll start with that. You provide your description of what you want to build. The more detailed, the better, right? So you want to provide it in terms of kind of the business process flow type of language as best you can. Describe specifically the data sources that you think you might need as best you can. It'll provide recommendations or help you create data sources if that's what is needed. But if you have existing ones, it's good to call that out. Once it'll take all that, process that, and say, okay, here's kind of the user profiles and personas that I think will be working with this, and define what those user requirements are. You can then review that, edit those using Copilot, and it will use that then to further construct, okay, here's maybe the actions that have the flow of this. And then also the data model, where you can review the data model specifically. Again, say, oh, make sure we're asking for these, including these fields of information as well. And then review the proposed technology. Here, the technology are really the connectors and actions that are going to be behind the scenes within the app itself. So really think of like those Power Automate connectors and actions that would be part of that. From there, once you've reviewed all of that, you can say, hey, go ahead and build this. It'll go ahead and create it. And then you can, again, refine it using chat and say, hey, maybe hide that field, maybe, change the way this field looks. Those kinds of things are available within here. Again, this is in preview. It's emerging. So I expect more from this over time, but for some simple app development, there's a lot of things you could do with this right now. So if you have certain people within the org that maybe would benefit from this, you might think about playing around with this a little bit and seeing what it can do for you. All right. So let's shift over to the Copilot engines and agents that are a little further along in their maturity and development, and that being Azure, and then we'll get into Security Copilot. So Azure Copilot has been emerging over probably the last 9 months, particularly. You had your kind of support questions originally, then it was starting to be able to share some reporting information. Now it can take actions on your behalf. And that gets to be really powerful. You also need to be careful with that because you want to make sure that you're not making it too easy to take actions that maybe you don't want. It will ask you to confirm if it's going to take an action on your behalf, and it will recognize the roles and permissions that anybody that's making those prompts and requests to it. So it shouldn't do anything you're not allowed to do anyways. But just be aware that make sure you really understand what it's going to be doing before you take actions. That being said, you can do a lot of things, get a lot of information on here just by working with the prompts. The other thing that's coming forward are specific agents within Azure Copilot for it to take action on your behalf. And that's going to be really powerful functionalities that continue to build that out. Let's start with the Copilot in Azure. The place this is surfaced is the Azure portal, the Azure mobile app, and then within the AI shell as well for anybody that's working with that. And their Azure portal, you see here, you click the Copilot button on there. It'll start like this, and then it'll provide you with the ability to have those prompts. There's a whole host of things that you can do within there. Just some of the summary of the capabilities here. It extends far beyond this. This is included with Azure. There are not additional licenses that are required for this from what we've seen for at least these things we're sharing right now. And it'll allow you to do things like, okay, so let's understand the Azure environment, get resource information, service health, analyze, estimate, and get recommendations for cost optimizations just through a prompt, right? Be able to visualize my network topology. That can be very useful as things continue to change in our Azure environments. That can be very helpful for gathering information rapidly that way. Allow you to work smarter with this I can execute a number of commands in here just through the chat. So I don't necessarily have to go to the CLI or other places. I can do it right here if I notice something, say, hey, let's do this. Let's take this action. I can discover, deploy, and manage VM storage accounts, the host of other elements inside of there as well. And then also have this help me troubleshoot and or improve the way things are performing inside of there. It also uses it to help me write code. It's able to write code in terms of CLI, PowerShell, also do Terraform and Bicep. So I have to tell it what language I want to be using, and then say I can tell it to, hey, write me code to do this in Terraform, and it will go ahead and do that. It can help you create API management policies, and YAML files for Kubernetes deployments. It can do a lot of things with AKS. And so a whole host of things here. I've got 2 pages of prompts. So I'll kind of pause at these and let you take a look at all these prompts. Again, there's a whole other page like this that we'll go to, but you'll see kind of those first ones are very informational. What are the things that maybe are not compliant? How many alerts do I have? Give me information on a certain thing I want to deploy. Forecast my costs. what's kind of my balance on things, a whole host of different things. I can just prompt it to give me information rapidly. I don't have to hunt down where that is in the portal for my reports. I also can then, in the next one, you'll see it start and take action. Create a virtual network with 2 subnets using this address space, using AZCLI. So I would create that using the right scripting for CLI. I want to use Azure CLI to deploy and manage AKS using a private server's endpoint. It'll give you what you need to do that. How do I do things? It'll provide you advice, and then you can put that in. Is there an anomaly in my AKS resource? Why is this resource not working properly? And it'll do the analysis there. Show me container logs that have errors in them in the last day for specific namespaces. Whole host of things. Here's the other. So again, alerts, why are things not working? Help me troubleshoot performance issues I might be seeing. Enable auto healing on a web app. They started to pull in we did a session on site reliability engineer agent that had come. That's been folded into this. So a lot of that functionality is built in here. And there's a whole host of things. Is there vulnerabilities in here I should be aware about? I want to automate scaling on here. It'll provide advice and maybe some actions to be taken there. So the whole host of things that are available to you within Azure Copilot. I encourage you to go explore this. Again, remember, this will be scoped to your permissions as you're interacting with it. Certainly start by asking things that are more informational before you understand, and I make sure you understand what the actions that it can take and what it will do when you tell it to do certain things before you dive into that, just to be careful. As you're creating those prompts, again, the same typical prompt engineering guidance applies, but specific to Azure, be clear and specific. The more specific you can be, kind of having the end in mind in some ways can be very helpful when you're creating prompts in terms of here's what I ultimately want it to do. So if I can provide as much detail as I have to that end, that you're going to get the best results from that. Setting expectations. So again, kind of beginning with that end in mind. Add any context that you can. So, which subscriptions, resource groups am I dealing with? What resources specifically within those am I talking about? Break them down as best you can into the pieces that would need to happen. It'll be able to do a lot for you. The more, again, specific you can be. Tell it where that it's going to need to customize certain things for you. Tell it. Again, you may be expanding as we're talking about this, but that's a good thing. It's going to speed up and get you the best results in the end. Use Azure terminology. That's kind of one of the key things. Make sure you understand the way it's described in Azure, and you're going to get the best results from there, of course. The other thing recommended is to use the feedback loop. When you get the response, frequently there's a thumbs up, thumbs down that's shown. It probably looks more like that. Thumbs up, thumbs down, and those. Use those. Give it the feedback in terms of, hey, that's not quite right, and that it will continue to improve over time, specific to you. You got to remember, each of these LLMs exist within your environment. So it's not being tuned off of everybody else in the same way. It's being tuned off of how it interacts with you. And so certainly encourage you to provide feedback. Tell it's not quite right. Tell it what's not right about it. It will continue to learn because you have that engine behind all of this. So certainly make use of that. So yeah, Azure Copilot alone has a lot of power. They're extending that further. And this is in preview right now with the agents in Azure Copilot. Here it gives you the abilities to agents currently for deployments and infrastructure, for migration, for observability, for optimization, for resiliency, and then troubleshooting and support. What you can do with these is say, hey, I want to calling that specific agent, which you can do from the bottom of the prompt. You'll see that there's actually a little icon on the bottom of that initial prompt that you can say, hey, I want to call this agent, and then have it do very specific things. So here we've got an example of it saying, okay, let's do an investigation for an alert that I've seen. It'll show you the reasoning here. Here it's collapsed, but you'll see the reasoning that it went through, so you know how it got to the responses that you're receiving, and then it'll provide the actions. Like here's what you ought to do as those next steps. Some of these can actually take action for you too, ultimately. So Very powerful, certainly worth exploring as these things are coming out further. It's going to continue to extend what's possible using Copilot within Azure and hopefully make everybody's life easier. That's the intent of all of this, is how do you make managing the Azure platform easier for those of us that are running those. From here, let's get over to Security Copilot. We're expecting Azure to slowly continue to evolve to be closer to what the Security Copilot, I'll call that a platform unto itself, as you'll see in a moment, what that's able to do, which is it's incredibly powerful. It extends into Defender, Entra, Intune, Sentinel, Purview, and a whole host of third-party connectors here too. This thing has a number of different elements tied into it to allow you to surface information that are be beneficial for investigations, understand the risks that are out there, troubleshoot issues. The Security Copilot platform is included with the M365 E5 licensing. There is this concept of the SCU, the security capacity units, that for certain things will start ticking on that. Most things will be included if you have an E5. If you don't have E5, you'll be just working through consuming SCUs. You'd have to enable those to start using those. And then you can set some boundaries for how much of that you're going to incur in any specific time in a month, essentially in a specific time period. So you have controls over that. So if you get excited about the capabilities here, which I certainly can understand for anybody that's operating in this space, that you can put some boundaries on this in different ways. But it's a lot included with E5. Again, be able to investigate and remediate security threats, analyze suspicious scripts, build KQL queries based off on all the data that's being collected, particularly within Sentinel, if you're leveraging that. Be able to understand risks and manage your overall security policies in different ways just by a chat interface. So it'll reach out to all the different platforms and the screens within those platforms that you might have to navigate. Otherwise, it handles all that for you and brings all that data together and be able to bring that through and be able to surface that for you so you can say, okay, here's what I got to go do, and or there are some things that it can do on your behalf. Most of that's going to be a lot of it's going to be guidance, but it certainly makes the threat hunting function tasks a whole lot easier than what you'd be doing otherwise, where you're searching different places for information. Help you define and manage security policies. Help you configure secure lifecycle workflows across here. So here's how I want to be operating here over time and develop reports for this. One of the big things that you're encouraged to is to extend zero trust to your environment across here. This will make the experience much better for everyone. It handles a lot of the concerns that you should have across there. So, make sure that you're protecting your admin and SecOps user accounts with the appropriate identity and access policies. Again, Copilot's acting on your behalf when you're interacting with this. So you want to make sure that anybody that's working with this that has certain rights into this have the correct access policies and that's scoped the right way. We want to do that in kind of a least privileged fashion so that people aren't interacting with things maybe they shouldn't and we're seeing things they shouldn't. And make sure you're protecting the devices so that nobody is able to leverage that on somebody else's behalf. Again, all this is because this is so powerful. You want to put in, make sure you've extended any zero trust framework that you have in place and or work at creating that so that you're able to manage the admin accounts and user profiles and devices the right way so that Security Copilot, it doesn't become more of a problem and it's really just the assistant that it's meant to be. And then one final thing is make sure you're securing access onto third-party security products because, again, Security Copilot can extend beyond that. Again, if you can get that in place, this thing can be incredibly powerful for managing the environments. Here's essentially how this works. So if I go to a prompt and put a prompt into the Security Copilot, I go ahead and send it. That gets sent into Security Copilot. That then works with plugins. Now, the plugins are how the connectors work to Defender, to Intune, to Sentinel, and to the third-party security products that are supported there, where that list is growing over time. You'll go ahead and ground those prompts in terms that those connectors will help translate so that the actions taken ultimately flow to those security security products the right way, that they get the correct instructions there. Then those modified prompts get reprocessed by the LLM. It then says, okay, let me make sure to, in terms of that, these security products will understand that I'm sending the prompt back the response back in the fashion to those that make sense given how they operate, what their terminology and what the connectors allow for. That then gets sent back through to the plugins with third-party products, and then you get your response back after that. So it kind of helps manage that orchestration between what I'm saying, in a natural language fashion to what these products understand, and then applying the LLM capabilities to provide some reasoning to here's some of the other things you should be thinking about or that need to happen in order to do this the right way. So it provides a lot of intelligence in here in a very controlled fashion to be able to extend this out to all the security environments that might be involved. And it can extend out to multiple at a time. All right. So I don't have to ask questions just a defender. I can ask a general security question, and it will find, based on the connectors I have, where the best place is to be able to source that information. So very powerful platform. It's a great framework for how this allows to be extensible and also be used in a responsible fashion. Some of the core functionality inside of here, obviously prompts. There's a whole host of prompts that they encourage you to try. And then you can obviously construct your own here too. Beyond that, you can convert that into prompt books. And there are some pre-built prompt book templates. It's a whole library of these out there where you can say, hey, check the impact of this external threat article within your environment. And you put the article in, the URL for that, it'll read that and then go and extract that information throughout your organization as it relates to the things within your environment, what threat intelligence is providing back in this case. Are there any indications within there? Then great, create the queries for that. It kind of leverages a number of different prompts together inside of a single workflow here, so that you can use, again, very simple natural language to have it analyze your environment for a host of different things. Very powerful inside of this. If you're going to see more and more prompt books be offered by here, but worth considering is you get into this, hey, I find every time I've got to ask this prompt and then this one, you can build that together in a prompt book and just trigger that each time and have some base field of information that you want that prompt book to be applied to inside of here. Very, very useful. We talked earlier about being able to scope things down. Workspace is the way that is done. So the analogy that Microsoft provides here is if your whole organization is the city, this tenant in this instance is the house. Well, the workspaces are those kind of areas within the house. That could be maybe scoped down to certain services. It could be scoped for certain agents then that could be created on top of Security Copilot so that they only operate within certain spaces within here. Could be scoped for certain users to be able to interact with it in only a certain way. You can manage the SCUs through here in terms of so you don't start running up bills that you don't want to inside here. You can manage that within the workspaces. So it's a way to just kind of organize how different entities are working with Security Copilot. So useful from a management perspective. Again, agents, beyond what Security Copilot does, I can create my own agents, and there are agents available within the marketplace. There are a number of them that Microsoft has developed. There are also third-party agents. So if I have other third-party tools, a host of different organizations and vendors have created agents that are available that allow for that, have ultimately the connectors, but then have the front end for, hey, here's the kind of things that this is tuned to be able to, through the same Security Copilot interface, I can call this agent and ask questions of this security platform that's part of my environment. So a lot of powerful capabilities here. You can build your own agents and provide for different connectors and different flows and functionality within there and help tune that for specific use cases there. The plugins, again, this is where you really have those connectors. So you can have plugins for Defender, for Purview, for Sentinel, for different elements within Azure Firewall, a host of different things inside of here. Also, then third-party plugins are available here too. This ties in with what we're just talking about. This is how it connects to all the different security platforms you have inside your environment. Be able to surface all that into one place inside of Security Copilot and enable you to ask questions across my entire environment this way. Finally, within the connectors, here they really start, it looks more like the Power Automate connectors at some levels and the actions that could be taken here. A couple core ones here, submit a Security Copilot prompt. Here's what that looks like. I can design my own workflows here using these kind of connectors, maybe use those towards building agents and other things. There's also a, fetch the responses. So I could leverage this, within Security Copilot, but I also can call this outside of Security Copilot where they're permissioned and maybe for certain use cases there where I've got another overall management workflow that's happening that I want some information that Security Copilot could provide with all of its connectors that this would be permissioned for. I could build this into other agents that are maybe managing the broader environment. So allows this to be extensible outside of Security Copilot as well as then be able to extend what you can do within Security Copilot as well. So really powerful. This has come a long way pretty quickly, continues to evolve, and now they have a marketplace associated with this too. So you're going to see a lot of further development alongside this. Really, makes things a lot easier with managing these environments. So this is kind of where I think that you're going to see Azure come next. And ultimately, you're going to see this in the M365 space and Power Platform as these kind of emerge coming forward, and they continue to enhance these, build out connectors, build out the ability to create further agents using this kind of tooling and focus, and continue to evolve these over time. So security is just the leader in this space right now. So really powerful, and I encourage all of you to go take a look at this. Again, like we said, with security, because it's so powerful, make sure you've got the right controls in place. Again, all of these copilots are acting on your behalf. So whatever permissions you have, that's what it can do. It can't do the things you can't do. Keep that in mind as you roll these out. A very important concept. At the end of the day, any copilot is only as good as the pilot in the vehicle that those allow them to be. So the pilot in these cases is you. And so I encourage you all to learn to leverage these copilots, start playing around with this, see what they can do for you, and get familiar with these. I think you'll find it speeds up your day and helps get more done in an easier fashion. And the vehicle is really the infrastructure. Make sure that your environment is well maintained, managed, and I should have put on your security. Make sure that you've got the permissions set the right way, so that this is running in the way that you want it to. Quick tour here. We would welcome the opportunity to spend 30 minutes with you to dive deeper if you want to work at enabling these, be able to chat more about, hey, what could this do for you? But you have a lot of these enabled inside of your environments today. I encourage you to go out and start experiencing those.